Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. One of the CDL teams with the biggest question marks going into this upcoming season is none other than the Seattle Surge. The flank guys put them down in the C tier the other day, largely because one unnamed pro player said they are absolutely terrible. The belief seems to be here for me, because the player that said that is actually not that good themselves, nor on a particularly good team, which might mean Seattle are absolutely atrocious. Do you guys buy this idea? Because what we've seen, they've not looked too bad so far, but as time progresses, will this team only be a search and destroy merchant roster? Very much interested in your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Firstly, I mention this at some point every single year. I know there's a few competitors on this actually now as well, but I know that TacMaps tweeted some updates, so I thought I'd mention them again. So I know that every year I get someone that DMs me to say, hey, what's that thing you mentioned months ago that allows you to draw strats on the map? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's TacMap. So they've done the new version for this game. So if you guys are unfamiliar with this, for example, Karachi here, you can just like load it up and draw the lines on where your arrows are so you can come up with strats and stuff for your team. It's cool stuff. And yeah, just wanted to mention that because I usually do it at least some point each year. Before we get into this Seattle stuff, I think that it's expected for some teams, especially a team like Surge, that maybe they'll be a better search and destroy team than they will be a respawn team. And there was a big question here from Turtle that got quite a few votes on, what is actually the most important game mode in competitive COD? Is it hardpoint or is it search and destroy? Now, I don't really know what the answer to this is. I voted hardpoint because that's what the stats will tell you, but search and destroy feels more important, I think, because it's game 5 in series, and there's the old mantra, search and destroy wins championships, which I think largely it kind of does. Like, you look at FaZe Major 2 last year, you look at Los Angeles Guerrillas Major 2 back in the Vanguard season. Without search and destroy, they wouldn't have got that far. But by the statistics, as Turtle goes on to say in the replies, only about 30% of series go to game 5, whereas 70% of series go to game 4. So in 2/3 of series, the teams are playing 2 hardpoint, 1 search, and 1 control. And then of that 70%, roughly half of that are then actually getting the 2 search and destroys. So over the course of a season, teams will play more hardpoint than search. So I don't know. I think in terms of winning it feels like winning an event weekends is more on search and destroy, because you're going to play better teams. You're going to go game 5. You've got to ice up in those game 5s and be better in order to beat them. Generally, that's how it is. But over the course of a season, I would say that being good in respawn is just more important because you just play more hardpoints. So being 70% win rate in hardpoint over the course of a year is probably going to be better than being 70% win rate in search. But, then again, if you make it deep in tournaments, I don't know. I think it's an interesting debate in it. I voted hardpoint, but search and destroy will usually win this type of discussion. And what does that mean for a team like the Seattle Surge? The other day, the flank was running. Basically, they did the flank where they prepared the matchups and the teams for that 75k invitational, which caused a fair bit of controversy, as we've seen over the last few days. But a big talking point was on the Seattle Surge. Is this team going to be any good? They had lots of interesting decisions to make last year, Surge. They could have sold Pred to OpTic for a lot of money. They decided not to do that, and now he's left them for free. This is their new roster. aBeZy, Illy, Hook, and aBeZy. Highly questionable when it was initially rumoured. Still highly questionable when it was eventually formed. aBeZy on the SMG. What's going on there? He was dominating challenges last year on the AR. Hook is the only SMG, really, that's meant to run that role. Illy and aBeZy is the AR duo. ARs that might have struggled more to get a spot if it hadn't been for each other effectively wanting to team together. So lots of questions. A team that definitely in search and destroy, I think, will be very potent. In the respawn modes, that's when the question arises. Now, this was the flank tier list they came up with. We talked about this in some depth the other day. And obviously there's some controversial things, but I think in general, they did a decent job. Initially, though, they were discussing Seattle in the B tier or even in the A tier because, their search and destroy looks pretty good. And from some of the very short amount of scrims we have seen, they've looked okay. I mean, there's been some respectable results. The thing is, though, we don't get the full picture. We don't get to see all the practice. And in general, how have they been looking? Well, that's tough to say. This is why I quite like waiting for when EasyMac usually reaches out to the coaches and does the coaches' power rankings, because that tends to give you a bit of a picture on what the coaches see day in, day out on the way these teams are practicing. That might not always be streamed publicly. So during the flank, they're discussing Surge, and Parasite says that one particular pro player, he says pro player, I'm pretty sure, so implies a player on one of these teams at least, and presumably one of these teams down near the bottom here, and not a man like Scrappy. We'll get onto that in a second. But Parasite says, look, this guy says they're terrible, and that isn't a good look. And Parasite said, oh, I don't want to tell you guys. Eventually he does say, and Aches then agrees by saying, okay, which team is that guy even on? Which I think is Aches' way of trying to leak who it is, you know what I mean? Maybe he said this just because he actually didn't know, but I think he might be saying that just to try and indicate which guy or which, selection of players he might be talking about here. And then they generally agree that if that player on that team says Seattle are bad, they must be bad.
I was saying Seattle, maybe AB. Listen, I've been really high on them just watching them play S&D, because them playing S&D has been fun to watch. Like, I feel like these guys... Go ahead, Chris.
I said I got a DM from another pro player that's apparently scrimmed them before or might know more, and they said Seattle stinks. I will not expose who it was, but that's just what I got.
Less inside sources, Seattle's ass.
Who is it? Scrappy?
Wait. At least put it in the chat so we know. We won't say it.
Yeah, we got.
If you called him ass, that's a Scrappy.
No,
for sure.
I'm not doing that, bro, because I don't trust you.
You could just made it up, bro.
Just put it in the chat so we can validate the opinion. Like, we won't say it out loud.
Okay, well.
Like,
Steve,
if you're gonna put somebody that's like ass too, then I'm not gonna take it with.
Okay, then see, that's your opinion.
Astral DM, Chris.
That's your opinion. So I'm not even gonna say it.
No, I mean just put who it was. I'm not gonna say who it is.
Now you gotta say it.
We'll talk about it later off the show.
Oh,
what? No, we're live on the show.
I'm not doing it.
Bro,
tomatoes.
We're not gonna expose.
Throw the tomatoes.
It's just if we know, then it helps us validate.
All right, you're gonna invalidate this opinion immediately. Watch, I guarantee it, and this is why. No, exactly.
Oh, that's not that bad.
You'll invalidate that opinion.
That's
Pat
not
will.
that bad.
What team are they even on?
I know what team they're on.
Are you dumb?
Bro, what?
We can't say. I know what team it's on.
Yeah, all right.
Do you know the rosters?
Yeah.
What team is this guy on? Yo,
Ben,
what team is this guy on?
Now, just to finish the thought, like, I just want to be clear with everybody. Like, I think in general this season right now,
that guy.
There is a mess of teams somewhere between like 6 and 10 who I think could all like jump each other within like a series or two. It's just a mess in the middle of this situation.
Yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess for sure. We'll
like,
keep Seattle here.
It's look completely different after.
Well, listen. If Chris is saying that person DM'd and said they stink,
they gotta suck.
I gotta say they are. They suck. Yeah,
they gotta suck.
They gotta be pretty bad, yeah. I mean, what do we do here after that info?
Drop them to the C tier.
Drop them to the C tier. Drop them down to the C tier. And we drop them down there.
So first comment, I thought, okay, it's Scrappy, right? Just because he's been trash talking these guys for a little bit of time. He trash talks everyone right now. Scrap's been getting into beef with, Shotzzy, with Priestahh especially, with, obviously after the flank drama, there was a little bit of discussion there from Pred. And even then when Scrappy said after this series they played the other day against Illy, Hookblast and Prolute that team of 4 is better than their actual team. So Scrap made this point, no, but sure, we know Scrappy trash talks everyone. Just because he says a team is bad doesn't necessarily mean it, because Toronto are going to be pretty good compared to every team, I would say, that isn't in that top 4 category. So which player could this potentially be? These are the list of rosters that are, well, they kind of exist on the website right now. You can click on it and see everything. So, let's take Aches' word at face value that he actually didn't fully know which team that player was on. So, it can't be that many players. I mean, he would, I think, know about Gwyn and that's his Gwyn guys, isn't it, on the Ravens. So really, you're looking at maybe Miami Heretics. But then again, right, if Parasite had typed in the chat, like MettalZ or Lucky or something, then even if Parasite or even if Aches, might not be too familiar with that player, and even though he did play against them. To be fair, back in the Black Ops 4 days and stuff, I'm pretty sure when they were Heretics in the league at that time, he would still know that they were on Miami, you know what I mean? Because, Spanish player, they're on Miami, apart from Real. That's basically how it is. Rocker, maybe, but, we've got Linz, and I'm pretty sure he knows about that. So, narrowing it down, it can only really be maybe Vegas if he didn't know about these guys, or much more likely the Gorillas team. Now, the Gorillas team doesn't even exist here yet because they haven't confirmed it. And, if I click on here, it doesn't even even tell me what it is. But we know that their roster right now is meant to be Assault, of course, Fame, we've got DiamondCon Stays, and then Estriel, right? So that was what people were theorizing in the chat, that maybe they're talking about Estriel and the guys on Los Angeles Grillers, just because, you know, Estriel is probably the name, if he is going to be officially on that team in the league, that the least people will know about. I imagine that they would have known that Assault is on Gorillas. I think they would have known that Fame is on Gorillas. So I think we can narrow down the players to who might have said that to Parasite based on this information. But to be honest, whoever said it, if it's on one of the worst teams, and let's be honest, they put Los Angeles Grillers down at the D tier. So, you know, if, let's say, Estriel of Los Angeles Grillers has said that Seattle are bad based on what they've played, then does that mean LAG or whatever other team that they might be talking about are actually pretty good? Because, to be honest, the first LAG scrims we saw after they made that controversial change, getting rid of Gunless and Asim and Kremp, I'm pretty sure, keeping DiamondCon, bringing Assault, Fame, and Estriel into the team, they looked pretty good. Their initial rotations, their initial scrims they played looked pretty promising. So maybe LAG are actually pretty decent early doors. I wouldn't be massively surprised if that's the case, just because I'm pretty sure their coach, when he also coached the LAG Academy team last year, they were very much ahead of the curve at the start of, I think, last season. So it could be a similar trends, or just Seattle are bad. And I think that there's a good chance that's the case, at least in the respawn modes. I know that we saw the other day, they played Team Temp. This is the thing, we don't get to see that much of Surge, and every single team that you see typically is just a pretty small sample size. We've only seen about 2 or 3 sets of scrims that Seattle have played so far. A couple against FaZe on like day 3, day 4 of the game. And then a most recent one here against Temp, where they kind of split the maps here against Temp's team. But on average, the maps that they won were, you know, closer than the maps that they lost. So still, Team Temp looked like they had their number a little bit. Now, of course, there is some reason to believe that Seattle could still be good. I know that Karma as well looked at that team and said that he thinks they've got a fair bit of potential. And, yeah, if they all click, then it works. I've obviously made my thoughts known. Again, in Search and Destroy, I think there's no real issues there, because in Search, the roles, like, that doesn't really matter that much. You can just play with what you want, pretty much. And to be fair, even in the respawns right now, largely 3 MCWs, which is going to favour that roster. But, yeah, if this is true that Seattle aren't so good, would they be the first team to make a change? Because last year they didn't, despite the fact that they maybe should have done. And this is what I wonder, because Los Angeles Thieves, they made all those changes in Cold War, and they tried, and it didn't really work. For example, Boston last year, they made all sorts of changes, and none of them really worked. So every year there's usually one team that, you know, goes through loads of iterations to try and make it work. And generally speaking, that's not always the best idea. But at the same time, not making any changes at all can also be a terrible idea, as we saw, I think, with Seattle Surge last year, when giving Gwyn a try possibly was an idea. So which team might have that philosophy? Because Surge's philosophy has generally been, no, we're going to stick it out. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do that, but then again, I wouldn't be surprised if they think, you know what, this hasn't worked the last few years, it's time to make moves. Boston are a team that's shown they're willing to make changes. So if Boston doesn't work out well, I could potentially see them switching things around. But at the same time, I think that they know that's a bit of a longer-term project, with Snoopy especially coming in with the Slasher and Priestahh combination on the ARs. So of all the teams, which is the most likely to make an early change? You could even look at Heretics, just because, you know, if they don't do so well, they might just put their substitute in. But, you know, does that really count on the same level? Because they've already done that pre-season now with JurNii back in and Erikboom out, than if another team was to make a change. I definitely think Seattle are in the conversation to be the first team to make a move on what we have seen so far and the evidence that was presented on the flank. So very much interested to your thoughts in the comment section below. I did mention this, I just put it on screen right at the end of yesterday's video, but I didn't discuss it at all. But I thought it was kind of interesting that, you know, Toronto have done very well the last several years, regardless of the fact that they haven't always had dominant talent on paper. Now they're bringing Envoy in on paper. That should make them even better. You know, this is their most recent record, their online record, their LAN record, and just their results, you know, like we talked earlier today about Dashy and what they've done on OpTic, but think about what Toronto have done over the last several years, the amount of finals they've made, the amount of events that they've won, the fact that CleanX has won like something every single year basically, and you wouldn't expect that to change this season necessarily. So very much interested to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.